JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is an anime that would work perfectly as a fighting game. You got the heroes, you got the villains, you got the over-the-top super moves, and you got the plot. But as far as anime fighting games go, there are pretty much two options. The first is a 2D fighting game that plays like a traditional fighter and incorporates typical fighting game jargon like overheads, DPs, and mix-ups. The other, more common option is a 3D arena type game that every anime seems to have dipped their toes in at least once. This gives the impression of fighting on an actual battlefield and gives you greater movement options, which honestly is more akin to what happens in actual anime, but 3D arena fighters definitely have a certain stigma attached to them. While both types of games are enjoyable and fun in their own right, I definitely prefer a more traditional experience. Now, JoJo is no stranger to either of these genres, so when I heard that they were remaking a JoJo fighting game for modern consoles, two games came to mind. The first was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven, which is the franchise's venture into an arena fighter. This game looks incredibly fun and at face value presents itself like a crazy what-if scenario. The other game was All-Star Battle, which is the more traditional fighter of the two, and looks like it's a spiritual successor to the JoJo game Heritage of the Future, which is another game that I've always wanted to play. Playing either of these games when they came out was somewhat limited. They were only for the PlayStation 3, with Eyes of Heaven also being on the PS4, but that's it. So if you were a Microsoft or Nintendo or even a PC player, you were out of luck. But now, thankfully players of any console can play at least one JoJo game with remastered but still growing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. Just viewing this on a surface level, there are a lot of reasons to get this game, if you're a fan of the series of course. For starters, All-Star Battle R is currently $50, a whole $10 cheaper than big games typically are, and is enhanced for Xbox Series X and S. Like I alluded to earlier, this is the only JoJo game that is easily available to people, unless you count Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 with JoJo Siwa. So for many people, including myself, this will be their first JoJo game. From the moment you turn it on, you're hit with one of the coolest openings that captures the feeling of the series wonderfully. Not only does this feel like a fighting game, it feels like a celebration of JoJo itself, and in terms of presentation, really reminds me of Smash Bros. With its huge cast of characters. In total, there are 51 at launch, with more to come down the line as DLC. They all range from the inception of the series, starting with Part 1, and ending with its most recent installation, Part 8. But that's enough about the characters, let's get into the actual gameplay. When opening the game for the first time, you get to play a brief tutorial that shows you the basics of how to play. Not to mention that it's a training session between Jonathan and Zeppeli, which is very poetic and cool. Even if you've never played this game before, things will look a little familiar if you've played at least a couple fighting games. You have a life bar and a meter, and the basic attacks revolve around light, medium, and heavy variations with special inputs in between to open up your attack options. If you have good timing in a combo, or if you just catch your opponent looking goofy, you can use one of your Heart Heat or Great Heat attacks, which are over-the-top and stylish moves that do insane damage. Every character is so fun to look at, and they capture the intensity and absurdness that the manga and anime are known for. Even though it's a 2D fighter, you can sidestep and dodge incoming attacks, making it feel more like a 2.5D fighter than anything. This is a great way to increase your movement and getting close against long-range characters if you're playing someone with a shorter range. What differentiates this from other games of the same genre are the various styles that each of the characters possess. There are 6 in total and include Hammond, Vampire, Mode, Mounted, yes, there are characters that fight on horses in this game, Stand, which is the most common of the styles, and lastly, Bow Armed Phenomenon, which is unique to one character. These are essentially the way how these people fight, meaning that instead of just playing as Jotaro, for example, you're also playing as the Stand, Star Platinum. These different ways to play really make characters stand apart from each other, no pun intended, and is a great way to further differentiate the characters on the roster. Also, and this is somewhat rare to do in a match, you can have these rush battles that activate a button mash showdown. These are super fun to do and really reminds me of beam struggles that appear in a multitude of Dragon Ball games like Budokai Tenkaichi 3. The best way to experiment and experience all the characters is by playing in the various modes that this game has to offer. The one that serves sort of as the game's main mode is All-Star Battle. This is a collection of iconic fights from all the parts, and there are even what-if scenarios that you can do, like what if Dio fought Giorno or Jotaro vs Diavolo. Seeing how all the characters interact with each other is part of what makes these fights so great and full of flair. Even the stages are popping with style. Just like the characters, they range from all the parts, but they go an extra step to fully capture the hectic nature of the series. Every stage has a stage hazard that's based off of events that happen in the story. For example, on the Cairo City level, Senator Phillips will drive frantically through the arena hitting anyone in his way, just like in Part 3. And if you look carefully, Dio's actually in the back seat. Thankfully, you can turn all these hazards off if you're having a more serious fight, but honestly, most of these hazards are easy to dodge and they aren't as invasive as other hazards in other games like Smash Bros. On top of the unique hazards, every stage also has a dedicated dramatic finish, which you can do by winning with a heart heat or great heat attack, and by standing in a certain area. Just like with the hazards, all these finishes reference an iconic part in the series. Now, these dramatic finishes aren't quite on the level as the ones in Dragon Ball FighterZ, but they still are great to look at and are hype when they happen. There are also submissions and challenges to do that will help you explore different characters' moves and can net you some really cool unlockables. Part of what makes a fighting game fun is finding an identity with one of the many characters on the roster, but this game takes it a step further by allowing you to customize every character. From extra taglines, to taunts, to special costumes, there's something to unlock for everyone. These features evolve characters that you identify with into characters that feel completely personal and unique to you.
Yes! Oh my god!
If you want more unlockables, you can head over to the shop and gallery where you can use the in-game currency to expand your collection even more. All-Star Battle Mode is a great game mode to expose you to what this game is all about, but there are a few other modes that will grab your attention as well. There are the usual suspects like an arcade mode and a versus mode where you can fight endlessly to see how far you can go and set up these cool 3-on-3 battles respectively. This game mode doesn't get much love because you can only do it offline, but it's still fun to come back to. But speaking of online, I think it's time to address one of the more prominent issues that this game has. Playing online matches has been the most inconsistent experience that this game offers. When it launched, it seemed impossible to find matches with strangers, and was even difficult playing with friends who are from the same region and have more than capable internet connections. If by some chance you do find a match, the connection quality can range from pretty solid with minimal lag to downright unplayable. Since its launch, however, the online has seemed to improve a little bit. I no longer feel like I'll find a match after Araki publishes Part 9, and most matches are at least playable. It's just a shame that by this point in time, having a quality online system in place, especially for fighting games, should be the status quo. But hey, many people including myself thought that fighters wouldn't get rollback, but look where we are now. So I'm staying hopeful. Still, as it stands, it is hard to do combos online because of the lag, and I find myself sometimes not wanting to jump back in just because of the frustration. Not having stable online hurts the game's longevity and can be a reason for waning player interest. But then right when you're about to get off and close the game, you see something like this. This is what keeps me coming back. Seeing the people who put in the time do crazy combos is a huge motivating factor. It makes you want to learn new things to do, new combos, new inputs, and actually utilizing what you learned in the match against real people is so rewarding. The possibilities with these characters are just super interesting, and there hasn't been another fighting game that has spoken to me in that way in a long time. Thankfully, even if you can't do insane big brain combos, you can still have intense and close call matches no matter the skill level. But if you do want to put your skills to the test, there are ranked matches that are available. The online overall could use a few quality of life improvements though. When playing a ranked match, you have to go into the settings beforehand to select your character that you will use, meaning that you have to do this process every time you want to switch to someone else. Also, it would be nice if there was some sort of communication system where you can say GG's or get f***ed to your opponent like in FighterZ, but that's just a small gripe. Hopefully as the game grows older, the online will mature alongside it. Still, as it is currently, it is good, just not as good as it can be. There are two words that come to mind that sum up this game perfectly, and the first is interesting. I don't mean like a passing feeling where you just say, oh yeah, that's interesting. I mean, this game is interesting in the most captivating sense. I'll be honest, I'm a huge fan of JoJo, but I'm only familiar with the anime, so my understanding of the series goes up until Part 6. So seeing the huge amount of characters that I'm unfamiliar with adds to the overall enjoyment I get from playing it. One of my favorite characters to play is Diego. I know next to nothing about him, but he's just so unique. He's one of the mounted characters in the game, can summon and even turn into a freaking dinosaur, and has one of the coolest looking GHAs. Diego is just one of the many characters on the roster that really radiate hype and interest. The other word I would use is immersive. Playing ASBR feels like you're playing within the actual JoJo world. The visual representation is amazing, the characters react and play off each other so well, and are even voiced by the same voice actors from the anime, and their personalities are built right into their moveset. It genuinely feels like you're playing that character. The people who made this game clearly love JoJo, and that notion bleeds through every frame of this fun fighting game. Whether you're looking for a new fighting game with kick-ass combos, or are just a huge fan of JoJo, this game fills both roles perfectly, and has a lot to offer in between. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Did anything I say interest you or make you want to check out ASBR? What character do you think you'll play if you decide to get it? Let me know in the comments below. Please leave a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you disliked it. It goes a long way to show me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Also, since you're here, I would appreciate it if you considered subscribing. I would love to have you as a regular viewer, but whether you like, dislike, or subscribe, you don't have to do any of those things. What you do have to do is have a nice day. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some more JoJo to play.